Great. We'll get that recording going. And we'll find a Q&A myself. Pardon me.
And chat's open as well.
Okay, great. So I am curious if you are writing a methodology or going to have written one. All right. I should be asking about hard lessons then, Andrea, that has written one. And written one, still struggling. Okay, I'm going to write a methodology soon. Okay, par for the course. And were you referred by faculty? Oh, you are faculty, you are students. You referred to by faculty. What's the status? How did you all make it here? How did that happen? And I'm looking to the Q&A. Wrote a method. So for the folks that wrote a methodology, add one more piece of it. What are you struggling with thereafter? Thank you, Susan. Nice to see you. Those that have written for it, what are you hoping to get out of this? Okay, I've written a methodology, also chair dissertations. Okay, fair enough. So you've written one, but are also wanting reassurance and okay. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, so all right, let's light this candle. So my name is Jim Lanny. I'm the CEO of Intellectus Statistics, Intellectus Qualitative, quant and qualitative tools to help with data analysis. But also, I understand that folks do need support with methodologies. You know, the way I was trained back 30 years and 25 years ago now is some people start with the methodology. How do you start with a methodology? Well, you have research questions, okay? And you want to develop, hey, who am I going to pick? Participants and instruments and so forth. The good news about starting with a methodology is if you have a methodology, you have a study. That's great. You can back out a lit review. You can obviously collect data and look at the result and so forth. But methodologies is a way of starting. And with some students, we even start with the data. Okay, what data is available to you? Okay, great. I have work data from hospitals or schools or whatever. Now I can back out research questions, okay, and tweak them a little bit that makes them unique. So there's lots of ways of going here, but just know that starting with methodology is okay. Even though folks may ask you for an introduction and literature and a methodology, but you can have that methodology in your brain and start fleshing that out. The worst thing possible, well, there's two things worst possible. One would be write an introduction and methodology and introduction and lit review, and then not being able to have a study that you can collect data or something of that sort. That would be a nightmare. The other nightmare would be being so slow in doing that someone else came out with your study. Happened to a friend. Working on a dissertation, somebody published the exact same thing he was doing. All right. So speed of things is also important. Don't get stuck on perfection. Get stuck on doing a very, very good job and going through the process. Get stuck on that. So let's start with quantitative methods, okay? And basically, these are outlines, okay? Broad strokes of what's in there. What are the main nuts and bolts that must be in a quantitative methodology? Quant or qual, you need research questions. Not any old research questions, clear research questions. And I would suggest, you know, if you're using Chat or Claude or any of these other Gemini, you know, go and put your research questions in there. All right. And ask them for 10 versions of that or 20 versions of that. Get really specific. Okay. I'm not just looking for social support on, you know, patients with depression or some darn thing. Okay. You know, what kind of social support? You know, what level of depression or other kind of health issues? So really you have to be really specific because you're going to need to nail down those constructs. So getting questions really, really clear is critical. It's the entire study. You have junky questions, expect the junky research because you don't have any specificity in there. You have to have that. So clear research questions. One more thing about clear research questions. Just to underline this, the constructs have to be measurable, okay? So when I talk about anything, emotional intelligence by gender, sounds easy enough. Looking at emotional intelligence by gender. Whose version of emotional intelligence? There's several different scales out there that are measuring different things, different aspects of emotional intelligence. Gender, are we talking about males and females? Are we adding non-binary? What are we talking about? So you have to be really specific about the constructs that are creating, that is in your language, in your research questions. Clear research questions. The next thing is participants. You have to describe these participants, okay? Who are there? Who are they? How many are there? Where did you get them? Presumably they have some knowledge about your domain, okay? So whether it's emotional experience, emotional intelligence, or anything else, who are these participants? Because if other people are going to replicate your study, they're going to have to know what kind of participants they are. They're all females of age 50 and older in the Southwest, part of the US or whatever. So participants are important, particularly for generalizability purposes. You cannot, after you do your study, you cannot intuitively generalize to other populations, okay, that are different. So you have to describe those participants. Instruments. Okay. If I had a nickel for every time somebody wanted to create their own instruments, do not do that. Or as my advisor used to say, don't do that, okay? Why? If you're creating even face valid things like, what is your stress level on blah, blah, blah. Okay, don't do that. You're going to have instruments that have reliability and validity. You're going to have them for your methodology section. Everything I'm talking about here is going to go into your IRB or Institution Review Board form. So instruments have to be, what are the constructs? How am I measuring those? There's 10 items that is measuring, external motivation. These other 10 items are measuring internal motivation. Okay, so you have to nail that down and then speak about the reliability and validity in each one of those constructs or domains or subscales. That has to be nailed down. For those of you who don't, okay, just plan on spending longer time, okay? By the way, how is it, out of all the world, of all the research, no one's got an instrument on what you're studying for your dissertation? How is that? Why is that? Okay. And how much literature is going to be about that, by the way? So not that much literature, and you're developing new things? No. Get out of school for your students or faculty overseeing students. Find something reliable, valid instruments, and cite that. Okay. And they're there to be used. I mean, I see tons of leadership surveys, be it servant leadership or the MLQ for transactional, transformational, laissez-faire leadership. These are aspects of leadership. Find out what you want to be studying. What are the measurements there? So instruments is really important. And again, I would say virtually never make your own instrument for the reasons I stated. Okay, let's get to the procedure. What procedure? Okay. How are you administering those instruments to those participants? Okay. So It might be, a one shot where you're looking at, teachers, desire to leave and leadership. One shot, okay? I'm going to give them all the survey at one time. Fine. Okay. You have to lay out that procedure. How do you do that? Okay. We've identified these teachers in this school or this district. I'm going to get their consent. And then going to, send them a survey via email. And then I'm going to ask them, please fill out the survey around intention to leave and about leadership. And here's the confidentiality or anonymity, probably anonymous, by the way. So you want that to happen. If you have an intervention, for example, and is a pre-post test, for example, okay, you're gonna have to describe that too. All right. So we gave folks knowledge pre-test on some domain. We then gave some educational intervention. We sat for an hour and we discussed A, B, or C. Okay. And then there's some post-test score. All right. How much did their knowledge improve? Okay. So that procedure has to be clear. Those are the critical parts. Okay. Without that, you don't have a study. All right. The next part is this kind of moving to the next results chapter, which is once I collect that data, what am I going to do with that data? I'm going to conduct descriptive statistics on everything. Oh, I'm going to use a linear regression to have leadership predict intention to leave. I'm going to do a paired sample t-test to look at differences in knowledge pre to post and so forth. So you have to tell folks, readers, chair people, journal article people, IRB, what are you going to do with that data? Okay. By the way, you should probably mention in that procedure how you're going to protect that data. All right. People get very finicky about how are you securing that data. All right. Is it identified? Particularly if it's medical data or other kinds of sensitive data. All right. And then sample size determination. That is basically, I know I need more than 2 people. I know I cannot get 1,002 people. What is that sample size? So there's 2 sample sizes in the world, basically. One is based on the population. I want to generalize how people are going to vote. I need to sample 3,000 people and strategically, okay, out of different parts of the country, and I can get and assess what the country is going to do. That is not the sample size that is very typical, if ever, okay? The sample sizes we're talking about here are based on the statistics in that data plan. All right, so it's called a power analysis, but it's based on the statistics. And they're much smaller. I mean, they're, I don't know, 34 for a paired t-test, 50 for a regression or some darn number like that, somewhere in that range, okay? It's not hundreds. And I have students come to me and they're like, oh, I need to get 150. I said, well, why? Well, my professor said so. Why did they say so? Well, they just said that's what it should be. Well, you do a power analysis and it's not that number. So, you should definitely do a power analysis. You can use intellective statistics, by the way, down and dirty power analysis in 2 seconds. Okay. You probably throw it into Chat GPT or another tool. I'm running a linear regression with 2 predictors. What's my sample size for a medium effect size? So, okay, sample size. What else do I want to say here? So, all right, those are the bones of it. Maybe I'll just get to some questions. How do you choose a sample size in a mixed method? Great question. You're going to need a sample size for each thing. For the quantitative, we just said, you're going to pick the sample size based on the analysis. But Jim, I have a correlation here, and I have a regression with 7 predictors there. Whatever one is most stringent, that is the largest of them, the largest sample size needed, that's what you need. Okay, that's the quant. The qual, I'll get there in a second, but I think whatever folks will let you do, okay? So, because it's not easy to collect data, particularly qualitative data. I saw somebody, I mean, unless you're sending out a survey and they're filling out, okay, and you can get 50 of them, hunky-dory. But, 10 to 15 is like kind of what I've seen over the decades. Okay, and we'll get there, but basically, you're gonna need different sample sizes for both, is the answer to that question. Okay, are there any ethical or efficient AI programs we can use to improve research? Okay, that's a broad question. And the short answer is yes, and I'm happy to show you some quant and qual tools that Intellectus has that leverages AI to do that. I mean, I'll touch on ethics. The ethics is you need to vet everything, okay? And you have to be smart enough to vet that. I don't mean smart in terms of IQ. I mean smart in terms of the literature and if something's wrong or not. You have to have that skill set, okay? So when you get AI suggestions, you have to vet everything. And I think it's a collaborative thing. And I think as time goes on, it's going to be a collaborative thing. AI is not going away. Electricity is not going away. The web's not going away. So let's figure out how to go ahead and use that in some collaborative fashion. All right. Emmanuel, that's a longer conversation about SEM. Mustafa, the minimum number of observations for independent variables. So again, I mean, I think you need to be doing a power analysis. All right, let me move along here. Okay. So methodology. One last thing about this before I move to the next slide. The cookbook analogy. What is a cookbook analogy? The cookbook analogy has several things. We're not talking about cooking the books, okay? But the cooking of the books, the cooking of the analogy is such. The cookbook is, here are the ingredients, you go get the ingredients. Here's how you mix them up, great, and this is how long you bake it for, or broil, or whatever you do, okay? All right? You follow that recipe, people can make that same dish. They can make that same cake, okay? It's a replicable thing. That's what a cookbook is there for. You can make the same darn thing, it's closer, as well as the authors of that cookbook, all right? Ditto with this methodology in your research. You have to be able to hand that methodology to your next door neighbor who knows very little about your topic, all right? And they can replicate that study. They don't know anything. Well, you have to be so specific, okay? Not crazy, but specific enough, okay? People get into a lot of minutia. Don't do that. It has to be enough. The minutia is, this is how we grew the cucumber to add into the salad. We don't need that, okay? We have cucumbers, you're slicing it this way. This methodology needs to have the cookbook, which is the neighbor has it and says, we're seeking to examine these questions. We're going to examine these questions with these participants. We're going to administer these participants these instruments. This is the procedure in which you're going to administer these instruments to these participants. Once they fill that survey out or the qualitative, we're going to conduct these kind of statistics with assumptions, okay, around this data and then we're going to ensure that we have such a sample size that we have an opportunity to find differences or predictions if in fact it's there. So think cookbook, think clarity in what you need in a cookbook. Don't get into minutia, okay, about how things are grown or things that are not going to help people. Bake that cake, create, conduct this research. Okay. Out of these things, okay, aside from research questions, which is challenging for people, if you talk to me, I won't let you off the phone until you have a research question. Most people know what they want to do, all right? Honing it down, okay, takes a little bit of work, but most people know what they want to do. But the second biggest problem people have is data plans. I don't know what kind of test to run, okay, to examine my questions, okay? So the data plan is made up of two parts, very simply, okay? It's the research question in statistical language. We'll talk about what statistical language is, okay? And what is the level of measurement of those variables, of those constructs? You have to know, well, we'll talk about statistical language, but you have to know what level of measurement of variables are. Simply speaking, do I have a slide on this? No. Simply speaking, levels of measurement is we have nominal, ordinal, scale. Basically, three types of variables. And nominal is Latin for name only, and it's basically just a label. Male, female, Republican, Democrat, Independent, things of this sort. Okay, just labels. Horse, elephant, okay? There's no hierarchy, so to speak, okay? They're just labels of animals or of whatever. Okay, ordinal, as the name suggests, ordered, okay? There's a name to it, small, medium, large, super gulp. There's a name to it, but they're also in an order, okay? Ordinal variables. The important thing about ordinal is that they're ordered, but they're not equal intervals. So the amount of drink between a small and a medium may be different than a medium and a big gulp. They still make these things, I don't even know. All right, so they're ordered. Horse racing, first, second, comes in a second later. Third comes in 4 lengths later. All right, so order, but not equal. Okay. And then you have scale or continuous or ratio or interval. I'm kind of using all of these terms synonymously. Basically, it has a name, 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch, 4 inch. It's got an order, 2's after 1, 3's after 2, okay? And it has equal intervals. The distance between 1 inch and 2 inches is the same distance between 2 and 3 inches. It's the same between 1-year-old and 5-year-old and a 5-year-old and a 10-year-old and a 10-year-old and a 15-year-old, okay? So labels, ordered, equal, nominal, ordinal, scale. Okay? That's all you need to know about that. And someone says, well, what is age? Okay. Well, depends how you measure age. You could have age groups, okay? Birth to 10, 11 to 15. Now we have an ordinal range, okay? Or I could ask for your actual age, right? Or I could have over 65, under 65, nominal. So all of these things can be presented in different ways. Good rule of thumb, by the way, is keep it as grainy as possible. Once you start collapsing into ranges or older, younger, you're going to lose a lot of information. So try to keep things grainy. Maybe age is the exception where people feel more comfortable with, age ranges rather than, 42 and a half or some damn thing. All right. Research questions in statistical language. What does that mean? Okay. So let's just take the example of, does leadership, okay, let's just say scores on leadership. I'm scoring my principal. Okay. Does leadership scores from a teacher's perspective, all right, relate to their intention to leave on a 10-point scale? Okay. So, all right. So I can ask that question in lots of ways. Does A correlate with B? Does leadership scores correlate with intention to leave? Correlate. That's a statistical term. Okay. Prediction. Okay. Does leadership scores predict or impact? All right. So we want to have clear research questions with constructs that make sense and statistical language. And I think I get into that in the next slide. So here we are. Research questions in statistical language. The three most common are, does A relate to B? Okay. Does leadership scores relate to intentional leave? Okay. Differences on A by B. Well, the differences on people's ratings of intentional leave by low leadership scores versus high leadership scores, something of this sort. Differences, okay? And then is A predicted by B? Okay. So another way, does leadership predict intentional leave? All right. So those are the most common. That covers lots and lots and lots of ground, by the way. I mean, it covers chi-squares and correlations and regressions and ANOVAs and t-tests. And I'm saying 5 kinds of regressions. Okay. ANOVAs, mixed ANOVAs. Okay. So there's a lot of ground that's covered in that. All right. Level of measurement, we talked about this already. Nominal, ordinal, continuous. By the way, that those icons kind of are the clue, okay? That little Venn diagram that they're just labels of things. Ordered, ordinal, and continuous. The ruler, which says equal intervals as it goes through. Okay. Question I asked 5 minutes ago, which is, my observation of where people are stuck, the data plans. So once I have the research questions in statistical language and I know the levels of measurement, let's look at each of those 3 broad things here. Okay, relates, differences, and prediction. So if the question is, does A relate to B? If they're both nominal, we're in chi-square land. If it's nominal and ordinal, A and B, nominal, ordinal, we're in chi-square land. Ordinal and ordinal, we're in Spearman correlation land. Ordinal and scale, Spearman correlation land. Scale and scale, Pearson correlations. So when we're talking about relating things, okay, based on the level of measurement, we're in chi-square land or correlation land. By the way, a lot of faculty, you'll say relate, but they really think regression or something of this sort. That's why it's really important to put down your best shot about what you think that data plan is, but you need to vet that, okay? Because what some people write and what some people read from that writing are 2 different things. So you just want to make sure that's really clear. Okay. And for sure, let's just say this. For sure, that needs to be done prior to conducting any analysis. You are running into liabilities if you don't have clarity about that data plan and you start conducting your analyses and then you submit that to your advisor or to, okay, they're going to say, relate, what are you doing with this? I expected regression. So you have to nail this down. So the data plan is really critical for your own efficiency and effectiveness in getting through this thing. Okay, let's move into differences. Are there differences on desire to leave by leadership? Are there differences on emotional intelligence by gender? Or any of the million questions that could be asked, okay? So one of the things to be heads up on is that the independent variable here, okay, the B, all right, it depends. You have to know whether it's 2 levels or more or 3 or more levels, okay? So if I'm looking at the differences on a scale variable by a nominal variable, I have to ask the question, does the independent variable B have more than 2 levels? Like looking at emotional intelligence by gender, and I'm only using male, female, okay? I can use a independent sample t-test, by the way. But if I looked at emotional intelligence by gender, male, female, non-binary, okay, 3 or more levels, I'm in an overland, okay? One way in overland, okay. All right, scale by ordinal, we're still doing the same darn thing. Ordinal by nominal, okay, we're kind of in this, we're doing some ordinal, like rankings of not sure I'm gonna leave, moderately sure, pretty sure, some ordinal outcome variable. By male, female, I'm in these, they call them non-parametric tests. It's just a fancy way of saying they don't have assumptions. But that's the land we're in. And Mann-Whitney is ordinal binominal with 2 levels. Okay. If it's paired, does my desire to leave or intention to leave differ pre to post some intervention? I'm in Wilcoxon land. That's the paired part of a paired t-test. When it's scale, and Wilcoxon when it's assumptions are not met, or it's an ordinal outcome variable. If you have 3 or more levels, we're in Kruskal-Wallis or Friedman land. Okay? That's differences. And then prediction. So, okay, is A predicted by B? The key thing about prediction, by the way, they use prediction, they use impact, account for variance in, blah, blah, blah. Okay, there's a few of these iterations that are all synonymous. We're all speaking to regression. Okay. The key thing about regressions is the level of measurement of that outcome variable. And there's really only 4 options here, okay? Okay. Binary logistic regression, okay? That outcome variable is nominal and binary. Nominal, male, female, only 2 levels. Okay, male, female, Republican, Democrat, whatever. Binary logistic, by a dichotomous nominal outcome variable. 3 or more nominal outcomes. I want to predict elephant, giraffe, zebra. Okay. All right. I'm in multinomial regression land. Ordered data, ordered outcome variables. Okay. Ordinal regression. And then scale, you're in linear regression. Okay. So again, the key part about regressions and selecting the type of regression is that outcome or that dependent variable. They also call that outcome dependent variable a criterion variable. So don't try to, don't get too hung up on the language, but just know that if somebody calls it one thing and somebody calls it another, you may be speaking the same exact thing, okay? As is in the case of dependent variable, outcome variable, criterion variable, as in predictions, impact, accounted for, okay? As in the independent variable or predictors, okay? So there's several ways of saying it, right? By the way, students, you want to know how your faculty speak about this, all right? You want to know their language and use their language and be clear about that. And for you faculty, share your language with your students. Tell them this is, there's several ways of saying this, but we want to say it in this way, right? All right. So before we get to qualitative, let me just take a breath, take some questions, and see where we are. Okay. Okay, so someone's asking about control variables. Control variables are slightly different. So control variables, and I haven't spoken about this. So speaking about synonymous ways of saying things, control variables, covariates, controlling for. These are variables that are outside of the main research question, but are having an influence on that dependent variable. So it is an important point that sometimes there are variables that you want to control for or use as covariates. Maybe in the next one I'll get to covariates, but certainly the key point to know is that if there's variables out there that are impacting that are potentially impacting or actually impacting the dependent variable or outcome variable, you should seek to neutralize the effect of that. And I'll leave it at that. I'm happy to have a longer conversation, but I will take a note that that it's worth talking about for a moment. Okay. Okay. Let's see, get to the qualitative methods. So similar kind of setup here. Research questions. Okay. Well, those questions should be driving those semi-structured interview questions that you're having. This is typical. What they have is that they have semi-structured interview questions. Okay. And people say, well, how is the analysis related to the, well, your question should be centered around responses to your semi-structured interview questions should be directly or very strongly related to your research questions. Participants, they should obviously have experience in what you're studying, obviously. Okay. Instruments, procedures, typically they're observations or interviews, okay? Or feedback. I just got to think about these chemistry students. What was their feedback and their anxiety around chemistry and learning that darn periodic table and why they taking it, blah, blah, blah. So, you have to have different kinds of qualitative or narrative interviews or narrative. Okay. Data plan, how are you going to excerpt? How are you going to code? How are you going to thematize? Some people have very complicated, like a 5-layer process going from like excerpts to codes to like sub-themes to themes to superordinate themes to research questions. And I've seen these matrices. I mean, I guess there's some sense to that, but at some basic level, it seems like at the end of the day, you want themes that are represented out there in the world, okay, that perhaps you have some codes that created it, okay, and some excerpts that represent that. What I mean by represent that is that they're good examples of that theme. And I'll want to get there in a moment. Sample size, people talk about saturation. You have no other new themes emerging and coming from, I guess if you're doing research and you're a faculty member, great, keep going, the more the merrier. Be easy on the students. It's not easy. When I hear people get, 25-hour-long interviews, it's a nightmare for students. I mean, really. I mean, it's to set them up and then to transcribe it and read and reread. I mean, you're in for like, a long haul there. So faculty, be nice to your students around the sample size there. Okay, and I'll show you in Intellectus kind of how we kind of handle some of that. Ethical considerations. Obviously, you need consent, confidentiality or anonymizing data, people's data. People are not comfortable sharing their personal data typically, even if you're friendly. So you want to, it's either confidential or anonymous, okay? And then how are you going to store that data? That's really important. IRB is going to want to know that. By the way, I don't know what the rules are these days, but it used to be the rule that data was preserved for 7 years, might be 5 years now. People want that data, and they're going to want to know how are you saving that data exactly. Other kinds of practical considerations with regard to qual. How is the data set up prior to you entering it into your in vivo or hopefully Intellectus qualitative? How are you doing that? How is that data being put in? For our AI qualitative tool, you can put it in by interview, you can put it in by survey question or interview question. You can put it in, some people have males and females, and I'm looking for differences in their responses. So I'm going to have a project for males and a project for females. So you want to think through how that how that data is being kind of curated or separated or managed first and then uploaded. Other ways of doing it, teachers, administrators, parent interviews. They may well have different themes about, hey, how do you think, learning's going on in your middle school, okay? Okay, other considerations, prioritize the quality and depth over quantity, for sure. People have, when I'm working with folks doing qualitative research, sometimes they have 20 themes, okay? That seems like a heck of a lot. Be empathic about the reader, okay? Namely your advisor or others reading this thing. When they finish reading your study, they have to hold it in their brain. They're going to walk away and they're going to say, what did they find in that study around views around chemistry class? Okay. You have to have to me personally, you have to have a manageable number. Now, if your faculty say, hey, have at it, I want different aspects of anxiety, different, fine. But to me, have something that people can get their brain around. All right. And by the way, if it doesn't make sense to you and you can't hold it in your brain, okay, then maybe there's too many darn things there. All right. Let me just show you a couple. Well, let me just put this up quickly. Samantha can help with students. Ashley can help with faculties, trials, demos, blah, blah, blah. Melissa can help with everything else. Phone numbers, website addresses for the qual tool, the quant tool. Statistics Solutions is really mostly quant, but it's got lots and lots of pages of helpful things around quantitative analysis. And there's a QR code to schedule. Melissa, this is the schedule, whether you're faculty, student, or anybody?
That's to schedule a consultation to learn more about the consulting. If you're faculty, you're going to want to reach out to Ashley.
Thank you. Okay. All right. And then let's just go to just to quickly show you qualitative about how these things, once you have that methodology, what do we do from there? And just to kind of show you really quickly, a AI-driven tool that has 4 transcripts in it, nursing and healthcare. And the AI tools, believe it or not, they're so smart that they can go out and they can grab excerpts. They excerpt important pieces or narrative, and then combines those similar excerpts. Then it develops a code name, a suggested code name, and code description. Okay, in under 2 minutes. This is 4 interviews. It does it equally quickly if it's 500 pages. I mean, I haven't tried things with millions of things, but in this short time, it identified 28 codes and 59 excerpts. And there's a way of refining this, but so you can go in and see each one of these details of the suggested code name, code description, and then the excerpts. It can also go in and thematize. So the 2 tasks at hand are how many themes capture all of those codes. Here's identified 14 of them. And then which particular codes go with which themes. So for AI, for patient relationships, encapsulated both of these codes, communication and trust and human connection challenges. You can go to the insights document. You can go to the bar chart to kind of see how do all of these codes, how many excerpts per individual. So it's really kind of looking at codes and participants and excerpts. You can also look at the theme level, same thing. You can also now tie a particular research question, okay, to the themes. And what the tool does is actually, it's going to lay out the research question, a theme, and then the rationale for why that theme addresses that research question. There's a lot more to be said here. In selected statistics, just to kind of show you, data can get uploaded. Okay. There's a whole range of analyses. And I just ran some t-tests earlier, but it's as simple as this. Paired t-test, just looking at pre versus post. I know I'm going fast. Sorry. Pre versus post. All you do is put in the select the test, put in the variables, hit calculate. By the way, video tutorials in the qual side, the quant side, there's 100 of them. Hit calculate. And for all of these tests, really from correlations down to structural equation modeling, somebody asked about earlier, all right, it's preloading the assumptions, is running the assumption, and interprets the assumption. Then it also has an APA table. It gives you the interpretation, and it gives you a draft of the results. Okay. There's also an AI summary. Just keep on the AI theme for a moment. Someone asked about the ethics of that. It's going to give you a draft in a second, all right, of what we found here in your results. Okay. All right. We give the disclaimer. So you can vet this. This might be the beginning of your discussion chapter. You know, after you perhaps talk about maybe some summary and bang through each one of your hypotheses, whether they were met or unmet. All right. So, quant. The other quick thing I wanted to show you is the power analysis. Don't fuss with G power. It's complicated. Don't fuss with past. Okay. Pick your test. Okay. Pick your test. Go to power analysis and paired samples. Okay. And you can see the sample size right there. Melissa, I wish we had a QR code for people to sign up for the. Can you put in a link where people can acquire intellectus statistics or intellectus?
Yep.
Okay, so she'll put that in the chat or the Q&A or where?
I'll put it in the chat.
Okay, so you can go, okay, so you'll go right to the link. It's cheap, it's $59 or some damn thing, something reasonable, okay? So, all right, let me stop for a moment, keep getting back to asking questions, hoping to get some inspiration for writing the papers for my mixed method PhD. Go to it, Amy. Faculty, I hope to gain additional support for my students. Well, Ramona, right on. You know, I think the tools, one thing I didn't mention for faculty is that we really do have helpful courses as well. So for the quant tool, there's a whole curriculum of different lessons around each of the stats. It's competency based, goes behind your LMS. It's dirt cheap, like, I don't know, $8 or $10, something of this sort, once you adopt the tool itself. So it's like kind of nominal. Ditto for the qualitative course. There's also a whole curriculum here. I don't know if I got to it or not. Okay, again, goes behind your LMS, competency based, and you can help students learn about different topics in qual. All right. Okay, let me see here. Yeah, I think I'm pretty good here. I think I'm good. I think I'm just going to go back to, if I can find it. Is this? And slide from the current slide. So I think I'm going to go. So I think I'm going to wrap up here. Again, feel free to reach out with any questions. We're here to help. We're building out research suite to help with every aspect of your research. The quant and qual tools are part of that. The curriculum is part of that. The methodology webinar is hopefully part of that. So hopefully this was useful for you all. And I think with that, I will say thank you all for your attention. Virtually everybody hung in there, so that's gratifying. And I look forward to seeing you next time. You'll get the recording of the video. You'll
Yep.
also get upcoming webinars for the quant workshop, the qual workshop. Melissa, I'm sorry.
Yep, everyone's gonna get a recording of this video and then links to the upcoming workshop and all the resources that were mentioned.
Terrific. And I think with that, I just wish everyone a happy, safe weekend, and look forward to seeing you all very soon. Thank you so much for joining, and please share it with others. Okay. Thank you all.